The first school where I was principal, where I started in February 2002, was Bramalea Secondary School. When I was at Bramalea is when, unfortunately, one of my staff members, Ashkal Kandir, she was shot to death by her husband. And as a result of that crisis, it pulled us together as a group at that point of a staff of 120, and including everyone from the office staff to the custodians. It was a horrible tragedy, but what it did was it forced us to pull together to respond to the students. And in addition, we had the students responding to the staff just as strongly to support the staff, which was sort of a magic moment in the middle of that tragedy. And that whole feeling really stayed in the school.
Certainly, one example of a need for improvement was in the literacy at the grade 10 level. The EQAO scores were at 78%, and certainly that was good compared to other schools. But the feeling was this school could do better.
In 2004, when I became supervisory officer, I looked at the data, a variety of data, but one of the key data I looked at was, of course, the EQAO, because it's a provincial benchmark. And I was very surprised that given the nature of our schools, that we were at a family of school in grade 3 reading, for example, just a little bit over 50%, which to me means 5 kids out of 10 are not meeting provincial standards. That was of serious concern to me. When it came to the junior assessment, it was just a little between 50 to 60%. In fact, much on the lower end of the 50%, both in reading and writing, and math was not very much higher. When it came to the secondary schools, we were equally concerned in the graduation rates in terms of the credit accumulation in 9 and 10, as well as suspension and dropout rates. So that was a snapshot right across K to 12 for me that stimulated all of us coming together and say we need to do something better.
Hi, Michael. Nice to see you too. Welcome to CH Best.
Let's take math. Your scores went down a little bit.
Yes.
So what were they? What was 2008, 2009? What were the numbers?
They went down about 10%.
Okay, so look at your instructions.
One of the things that got my attention was the pass percentage, grade 9 credit accumulation, which was sitting just below 80%. It was fairly low, and we were losing a lot of students.
What was really important is that I was able to see and view and observe and listen to everything that's happening in the school. I wanted to take the pulse of the school.
It really started when I began my entry plan, which I called Listen, Learn, and Lead. And I spent the time talking to each and every trustee for about an hour, just talking about, what they saw, got some of their insights.
The very first thing I did was I had the teachers within the staff sit down in table groups and asked them and said, what are the top 3 priorities for the school in order to look at moving ahead?
I would say a good month was spent intensely talking and building relationships and making connections with parents and the community.
The number 1 priority was the grade 9 pass percentage. The second thing was school safety. And the third was plan, physical plan. Because the school was built in 1963, they thought that was really important. So taking that feedback, I then started to came up with a plan to move the school forward. The very first thing I focused on was the school safety. Part and parcel with that were the extracurriculars that were in the school. Football had disappeared from the school. There hadn't been a rugby team at the school, so I started coaching rugby with a couple of the phys ed teachers. And that allowed me to make a connection with some of the kids who were most at risk in the school too. And students notice that, and they see that, and I think they value that. The next step, I think, once that environment was created, was the more difficult step. And getting down to, let's look at the data, let's look at the hard data.
Actually, 2 of the columns here identify 2.0 expectation.
I think that the data plays such a critical role in that. And I think what you do is you illuminate the data and you build a compelling story, a compelling reason why you want to do something.
And the children will be interpreting the graphs and talking about what the data shows.
First of all, it's building the trust.
Yeah.
And then it's building that climate of getting used to seeing data, to talking about data, to talking about results, particularly when you start to see it move in the right direction.
And how we can actually do directed teaching so that we're hitting these.
Data don't change schools. People do. But people need to be informed by good data to make good decisions.
We've been able to look at the EQAO dot scores, and they have just been released for this year. All of these kids are meeting the provincial standards, and each dot or star represents a child in our school.
The focus is on, each and every student and engaging students by any means necessary.
And then I had all of the data with a 5-year trend in terms of a bar graph of the EQAO data at their disposal. And then asked them to set targets as a family of school for the coming year.
Yeah. So how long between that first meeting when you identified these 3 issues and then you started to see, and the staff started to see some positive movement?
Within a couple of weeks.
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
So I'm trying to communicate, less is more. Let's be great at these 3 things over the next period of, 8 to 10 months. You can't be everything to everybody. You have to really have a laser-like focus and come back and reassess where we are and where we want to go.
Yeah. Well, I picked 5 or 6 things that I thought would work at Bramalea, and then came back to the staff about a month or so in. I laid out what my ideas were. And I said, what do you think of this stuff? Be honest with me.
The decisions around moving from good to great really were a team effort. We built it certainly starting with the curriculum heads and the admin team, but moved it through the staff where we've had multiple meetings during PLCs, during staff meetings, and have, as a whole, decided what would look great.
This is what we did in our first PLC, and we asked how do we use evidence of student learning, such as assessment, as part of a continuous improvement process.
Yeah.
And so for me as a new principal coming in, what was working well?
Yeah.
And so the teachers were able to write down some of their ideas.
For me, being a superintendent of education is about working with a team of principals. Is looking and seeing what their needs are, identifying the needs, finding a way to put the resources in their hands, and then letting these exceptional educators move it forward.
Yeah.
Come on in.
Yep.
So this is our literacy room and our resource room that we have. And this is what we've done in a lot of Northwest 3 schools in terms of building capacity and teacher resources. We want to have the best for our teachers in order for them to teach and be able to support our students.
And when I sort of put together a little package about, what they can expect from me, at the top of the list was transparency. And really, there's no big surprises here. Our number 1 priority, our focus is going to be student achievement.
When we looked at our results, we found out.
The second stage connects with what I had previously said. The second visit into the school will be taking their school improvement plans, which they submitted last year, and their EQAO data, and rolling up our sleeves, sitting down with the principal for an hour or so and saying, let's talk about the hard data that you have from the last 5 years in your school improvement plan for the coming year. Let's talk about how you're going to get there and how I can help you get there.
I'm only as good as the people that I'm surrounded by, and so really empowering and investing a lot of opportunity within those superintendents to run those families of schools, to have a sort of sense of the system standard we're aspiring to, but again, allow them the opportunity to customize, to localize what needs to happen, because they know their staff, their students, their demographics better than anybody else.
What's wonderful about Northwest 3 is that we have a team of principals and vice principals who work collaboratively together, and we do have a common understanding and a shared moral purpose in student achievement and moving children forward.
Yeah.
great when you start to put things into place and you start to see staff who maybe perhaps looked a little bit uncomfortable start to feel better about themselves in terms of their interaction within the halls and interactions with students.
And I think what we want to do is make a big organization small so that people have an understanding and feel a sense of connection. They know where they can go to get an answer, to get the support that they need.
Some factors to consider in going through the data.
I'll be talking a lot about, each and every staff, irrespective of job category, feeling that they're wrapped in support.
And in addition, the real hands-on, get into the schools, be visible in the schools, spend your time in the schools, approach to leadership, and that's something I believe in as well.
Our scores last year were at 93%, a substantial increase.
Yeah, from 78 to 93%.
That's right.
That's unbelievable.
Right.
That's great.
Right. We had close to 20% of the kids failing, not getting all of their credits in grade 9. Went to almost 98%. It was 97. Around.
So 80% to 97% or 98. Yeah, fantastic.
The great thing about it is they haven't just raised the bar. They've also put the supports in place. And that's the same thing that you want to do in your system, is you want to make sure that there's an understanding, a shared understanding of where you want to go, but you want every person in their role, in their responsibility to feel like they're wrapped in the support to get you there. And I think they've put their money where their mouth is. And, from my perspective, you couldn't ask for anything more than that.
I do believe it's possible for 100% of grade 9 students to get all 8 of their credits, at least by the end of the summer. And then for when the cohort starts, you have every single student with 100% accredited compilation. I believe that is possible.